Hi, professionals. Welcome to this week's episode of the New Professional Podcast. We're very excited to be interviewing Ashton Preston, who is in charge of recruiting at Mongolian Concepts. Hey, Ashton, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
So can you tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got to where you are today?
Definitely. Sure. So as you were saying, I'm currently the HR recruiter at Mongolian Concepts. So I handle all the sourcing, first interviews, the entire hiring process, all the way to the end with onboarding and actually getting them implemented into the system. Along with that, I handle other little various facets of HR. So employee verifications, helping out as far as with W-2 requests, and then currently in the process of handling payroll. I actually submitted my first payroll today. So that was pretty fun. I pretty much got started in this industry. Originally, I played sports in college, played football. As every athlete, you want to try your chances at making it to the pros. So during that time, I played college football at North Texas, and then played one semester, my final year of eligibility at a school named Incarnate Word in San Antonio. Relocated back to Dallas and began, training, trying to go to the NFL. And then that crazy little thing happened in 2020 called the pandemic or something like that.
Oh, yeah, that crazy thing.
Yeah, that crazy thing. That whole situation happened, and it really put that childhood dream kind of on the back burner. So during that time, I was still, trying to prep, trying to really, as far as get into, try my chances at least at getting to the NFL. And then it got to the point where I was just, I had to have a self-talk with myself, and I spoke with my parents and a lot of friends, and just got a lot of advice from, where should I really take that next step as far as in my life and kind of my likes and dislikes and things along the lines of that. And as I was really kind of going through that transition, as everybody who's transitioning out of college, really trying to figure out, okay, I'm done with school. Okay, what do I do now? Where do I go now? Yeah, for sure. And my situation was even a little, even more different because it was a whole another year that went by before I actually tried to get as far as in the workforce. Because during that time, like I said, I was training, trying to chase my childhood dreams and things like that, which was definitely great. But during that time, I was really trying to figure out, okay, really honing in as far as what type of person I am, what are my likes, dislikes, what am I great at, what am I not so great at. And my biggest thing was I'm really great at interacting with people. I have a real good knack as far as just interacting, talking with people, and just, expressing that energy as far as into everyone else and creating, an overall fun environment. So I actually spoke with a few friends, and they were like, have you ever thought about going in like human resources or doing anything like talent acquisition or recruiting? And I was like, never have, but I think if I was to ever choose, a career, I think that might be actually something I would get into. So, and I had some experience as far as in recruiting during an internship while I was in college. I was actually doing recruiting for a financial advisor company named AXA Advisors in Dallas. So was doing some recruiting there. So I had kind of that background, but just never really thought to get into it. So transitioning from that is my mentors in college were best friends with my first my first recruiting job. They were my first manager. Funny story was I don't remember ever applying for the job. The company called me. Yeah, do not remember applying for the job. The company called me, who was my previous manager, called me, went through a whole interview process, and eventually, was hired. And from that point forward, I got my first recruiting job. So I was really excited. And then come to find out, about a week later after I got on the job, found out when I spoke with my manager, like, yeah, Tiffany. And I was like, yeah, I know Tiffany. Like, Tiffany was my mentor. Like, she's like, yeah, do you also know Russell? I was like, yeah, Russell was my mentor too also. Because they were my advisors as far as in some organizations I were in when I was younger or when I was in college. And she was like, oh yeah, like those are my best friends. And they actually passed your name along to me and said that you were very involved on campus, and not too many athletes. You were one of the first few athletes that were actually involved in a lot of organizations on campus and things along the lines of that. So they kind of pumped my name up a little bit to help me get into that role.
It always pays to know somebody, doesn't it?
Exactly. The saying is true. It's not always what you know. It's a lot
Definitely
about who you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, and then from that point forward, it just kind of took off. I was in recruiting there for about 5 to 6 months, and then was promoted to handling the training and development department. And then from that point forward, I transitioned over to Mongolian Concepts as an HR recruiter, and really expanding as far as on my HR experience. So in that whole nutshell, that's how I kind of got to where I'm at now.
Well, that's awesome. So what drew you to HR was really the interaction and helping people along in their career journeys, or was there other things that drew you to it as well?
Yeah, for sure. I would say that was the biggest component. Just being in a career where I could truly have a direct impact on another individual's success. Because that's something I've always done my entire life was, as far as in college specifically, I was a captain on the team. I was one of the leaders. I was an exec member as far as in multiple organizations. So just being a leader and just being in the position where you're helping a lot of people was just something natural to me. And I just always truly believe that was my purpose on earth, is always to help people. So
I love that, because so many people can kind of forget that leadership is really about helping the people within your organization or your group or your team. And so I love to see how you translated that into working in human resources and recruiting. That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. So it's definitely been a great experience. And it's something that I truly am proud to be able to say, because I know not too many people can say it, but I wake up every morning. I'm actually like happy to do, I'm happy about my career. I'm happy about
I get that.
My decision to go down that path. So it's been a great experience.
That's amazing. So you said that you did a little bit of recruiting during an internship in college. Was that before COVID hit?
Yes. So that was 2019. Actually, that was actually my last semester in college. So I was, my internship was from January 2019 until May 2019 of when I graduated. So
you got your foot in the door early through your internship. Mm-hmm. How has recruiting kind of changed in between having COVID started and now where it's starting to kind of, we're nearing the end of it. So we should be seeing things change a little bit now. Mm-hmm. What is your perception of, is it harder? Is it easier?
Yeah. It's, I would say it's definitely made it a lot more challenging. Because I have this conversation with a lot of people often. Because I get this question a lot, especially with me just being in that career period. You see it all the time.
It's a hot topic today.
It is for sure. But I truly believe that when it comes to the pandemic, obviously there were some positive and negatives. When it comes to just the workforce, I feel that the positives of kind of going through that situation, during the time, a lot of people were at home. They were just, kind of with their families or just sitting in the house because nobody was going anywhere. Nobody was doing anything. If you did go anywhere, it was, go pick up some food and get it to go and then go right back home and sitting home for, 12 to 16 hours, in a day. And during that time, I really think it really helped people hone in on certain skill sets that they may not have had time to really, tap into as far as, before the pandemic. It was like, okay, you go to work from 8 to 5, you probably get home, hang out with your family and kids for a couple hours. And then around 9 o'clock, you go to bed and you do the same thing every day.
Yeah. For anybody who listened to our hustle culture episode, we actually tap into that a little bit about, hey, people finally had the opportunity to develop new skills, start new businesses. Yes. So I can see how that would directly impact recruiting today.
Yes, for sure. Because it really just helped people, which I'm obviously on mine, and it makes my job a little bit harder, but it's a beautiful thing to see personally, just because you're able to see a lot of people go down different avenues that they may not have been able to, tap into before, that they're able to actually make an income out of. And it's not the best thing to say, but a lot of people really started to realize that, I don't necessarily need to go work a 9 to 5 to make a living. Because I always say with certain people, I think it really just kind of tapped into a lot of people feeling like, hey, maybe a 9 to 5 isn't really for me. Maybe I can go start this business and, actually make an income to support my family. Or, maybe I can, start, XYZ or whatever the case may be. It really just helped people as far as, find themselves a little bit more and be able to kind of tap into those avenues, which I overall think is a great experience. But it's definitely made the recruiting side a little bit more challenging. So it's about, finding a little bit more creative ways to try to get candidates in the door, which I think that's what a lot of jobs are really starting to lean on. So,
yeah. And I mean, it's a new positioning tactics, really. Are you finding that you have to word things differently or present them differently now?
For sure. I would say for me specifically, I think how as far as reword things is I try to really hone in on the culture aspect.
Absolutely.
Because I think that's a huge thing that a lot of people are looking for more than obviously, financially, everybody's looking to, make a certain amount of money, wherever career field or whatever job it is they want to go into. But the biggest thing is that everybody was able to experience how it felt to, kind of have that peace to sit at home and feel comfortable, within themselves and things along the lines of that. So I think now they're really looking to have that same, level of peace and comfort at their actual job. So I think it's really important. See that. Yeah. So I think it's really important that for me, I try to hone in a lot on the culture aspect and letting individuals know that, hey, yes, this is a job, but we will make sure that, that we
care about you as an individual. We want to see you grow, all of those important things, because, development is so important in the workplace in general.
Yes. I
can also imagine you've got a lot of management that you're hiring, but you also have people at the server level within those restaurants. I bet you that focusing on the flexibility of the schedule is a huge draw for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. It's having that combination of a work-life balance, which it's funny that we're kind of having this conversation now, because I had this conversation with my mom and we were just kind of speaking on, the transition of her generation to our generation and how she spoke with me about some things whenever she was younger, is that, she never saw her mom take a day off work. Or, said, I need a mental health day. Like those weren't a lot of, that was not a thing. And now you're seeing, as far as with our generation is, which I like to call it kind of the whole mental health movement, is that's a big component when, individuals are looking for jobs. They want to know, hey, how is the work-life balance? Do I have, that room to, if I need a day off, or if Monday was just too stressful and I just need to take a breather on Tuesday, can I do that? Do I have that breathing room? And those are key deciding factors as far as, when you're hiring, or when you have individuals who are looking for a company, is they want to know, hey, do I have that breathing room to, take a step back? Let me catch my breath. Let me, get a day off and just not think about work. So,
which makes sense on why recruiters would be touching on company culture so much more now. I bet you if we were to talk to people within the organizational, I bet if we were to talk to people who were in charge of creating culture, that would be a big thing too, is probably a lot of companies had to rework their cultures. I mean, everybody wants to be Google, right? Everybody wants to work for Google. It's not possible for most companies to achieve that, but it is certainly interesting to see more people moving virtually, the more flexible times. I keep seeing this unlimited PTO thing come up for companies. It's just very interesting to see how we have to start assuming people want to work, and we have to make them want to work for us in a way.
For sure. Because it's really at the point now that before, individuals were just, hey, a job offered me, I'm going to take the job, just to take the job because I need money and, I have bills to pay and things like that. Where now it's,
they have
individuals
options.
are more so, they have options, especially now because hiring is across the board everywhere now. Everybody is constantly hiring, and it's a lot easier for people to get jobs now compared to before. It's like, you may apply for a job and
you didn't hear back.
Anything. Yeah,
you just stared at your inbox hoping somebody would email you back.
Exactly. Where we're at that kind of point now, I wouldn't say post-pandemic, but kind of at the somewhat
tail end of it. We hope, cross our fingers.
Yeah, let's
don't jinx it, please.
Let's hope not another variant comes out. But yeah, we're at that point where, you can apply for, 5 jobs and you'll hear from 3 in the next 24 hours. And then you can have a job, by the end of the week. So it's more so of companies are really at the point that they have to sell themselves more to that individuals compared to the individual have to sell themselves to the company.
All right. So bearing all of that in mind, there might be people listening right now who have never had to, they've been on the other side, like they've been interviewed, they've been hired, but they've never been in a position to create job listings, to interview people. So if somebody were to begin this process of trying to recruit for their company, where would they start?
Yeah. So, and you're asking as far as for a company specifically?
Yeah, I'd say as far as a company, we'll for the time being assume that most of our listeners are from small businesses or small companies.
Yeah. So I would say the biggest components is if let's say for me instantly, if I had a company and I'm trying to build that foundation where we can definitely start bringing in candidates as far as to fill our position, and we don't have to deal with the struggles of hiring and trying to get as far as people in the door, or just even getting a pool of candidates. Where I would first start is definitely at the basis of the culture. How do you want your culture to look? And when I say specifically how you want it to look, is your actions need to back up on your words, because you can make all the great mottos and all the great slogans in the world, but if the actions don't back it up, the individual is going to get in there. They might stay for a couple months, but during that entire time, they're going to be miserable. And then you won't be able to even retain anybody for 90 days. You
want to set reasonable expectations from the beginning.
Exactly. So my biggest thing would definitely be laying out that culture. How does development look like specifically? How does that process work as far as, for a case by case or position by position? And then from that point forward, I think you should transition into a lot of team building. I feel like team building is really one of the greatest components to help with retention compared to the financial side. Because I think we're really at the point that, as I was saying earlier, is that it's not all about money now for people. They want to feel comfortable. They want to feel at peace. They want to actually enjoy, the people that they work with, things like that. So I would definitely hone in.
Oh, sorry. Not to make the podcast about my experience, but for my current job, I actually took a pay cut to take a position where I felt that I was going to grow more. So it's definitely about opportunity. I mean, obviously, I'm not everybody, right? But I feel like universally, we're seeing this change of, I want to do something that matters, and I want to feel like part of a team, and I want to know that that company actually cares about me as an individual and my development. So it's really reassuring to hear that from the recruiting side of we want to create that culture. It needs to be real.
Yeah, for sure. It has to be genuine and authentic. You have to build a baseline of really, always, ask individuals, even at my last company, when I would talk to different hiring managers and things like that, is we would have conversations back and forth of, if you were interviewing yourself or you were trying to hire yourself, what are some key things that, what are your morals? How do you, as far as what is your moral compass? Are you somebody that's big on empathy? Are you somebody that's just big on, hey, come to work, do your job, and then go home? Like is you have to understand, okay, what is it that, I'm specifically looking for, or how do I want my culture as far as to be structured? And then from that point forward, then you can decide as far as the type of individuals that you are looking to bring in. But I think with that you really have to be more on that empathetic side and understand that everybody that you bring in comes from, different backgrounds, come from all different walks of life. So if you can create a culture and an environment where they actually feel comfortable enough to come speak with you about any issue it is, and they don't necessarily feel like, oh, well, if I come talk to my boss about this, I'm scared I might get fired, or they might look at me a certain way, or whatever the case may be. When you build that culture, then from that point forward, that's how you are able to retain people. Because comfortability and peace is one of the biggest things when I speak with different candidates, or individuals who are saying, my common question when I look at somebody's resume and I see that, oh, they've been at this company for, a year, 2 years, 3 years. Well, hey, why are you looking to leave? The biggest thing I hear often is, well, the culture just wasn't, it wasn't a good fit for me. They weren't welcoming. They weren't understanding. And that's always frustrating to me, because that's one of the easiest components that you can have. So it really gets to that point that you really have to understand, is, how do you want that culture to look, and how are you going to create different creative ways to overall retain the individuals that you come into your organization, without just throwing money at them and saying, hey, here's money, here's money, here's money, here's money. Because there's always going to be a higher bidder, regardless of what. So you have to start finding other creative things that can overall help you kind of alleviate that issue.
Absolutely. So once you've defined your company culture, say I needed to go out and hire somebody tomorrow, and I've got my company culture written up. Where do I start? How do I start looking for people, especially in a competitive job market like this one?
Yeah, for sure. I think I would say obviously you have your different job boards. You have Indeed, ZipRecruiter, you have Monster, you have all of those different platforms that are easy to tap into, and that you can, create a large pool of candidates. But I also, obviously, as we know, those things cost. They're not free. You have to, obviously pay a fee, and, obviously, paying for it is worth it, because it definitely helps you as far as in the process. But the era that we live in now, one of the key things that a company can really hone in on that is free of charge and that you can use anytime you want is social media. That is really one of the easiest components as far as to gain candidates. And that doesn't necessarily always mean, obviously you would, go out posting, hey, we're hiring for this, we're hiring for that. But if you can, show or give examples of, why these individuals should come to your company.
It's fun to work here. Look at this cool stuff we do.
Look at we're doing this. Or, hey, today we had, we took the entire team to Topgolf, and, we had a great time here. And, we once a month we try to, do some type of team building or team bonding. Hey, every year for Christmas, we do a Christmas giveaway, or, things that overall make people feel excited or make people feel, hey, that actually looks like a fun place to work. And I would say that, really tapping into that social media side is definitely something that, it's free and it's easy. It's just about, being creative and being consistent with it.
Absolutely. And in a culture of, we talked about knowing somebody's always important. Social media is really easy to share, right? So if I'm a manager at a location that needs to hire, you'll be like, hey, we're hiring, come join us. And then you've got that more personal touch too. So I've loved to see how hiring managers or local managers who just need people have taken that approach, because knowing somebody pays off.
Exactly. And even also to even add on to different ways that you can, build on, with helping as far as with hiring and, trying to find the right individuals to bring into your company, is definitely getting your face out there. Obviously, social media is one way to get your face out there, but actually going to, different organizations, depending on obviously your demographic. So I know at my last company, when we were hiring for salesmen and things like that, like we would actually go to college universities, walk around, pass out flyers, You can even go on Handshake and just type in, job fairs near me, and it'll pull up all job fairs that are either virtual or in person at every college university in your area. And you can obviously filter it out to how far you want it to be, whether you want to be within 20 miles, things along the lines of that. But these are different ways that you can overall help increase, your pool of candidates, rather than just, kind of doing it one simple way. It's like, hey, we're going to post this ad and let's hope we get, 100 people.
Cross our fingers and.
Yeah. That doesn't, the world we're in now doesn't work like that. So those are definitely, different ways that I would say, is how you can kind of kickstart that process.
Excellent. So we've looked at your company culture. We've looked at how to get your ad out there, or how to get your job listing out there. Mm-hmm. What about once you have an applicant? What do you look for to know if an applicant will be a good fit? What are some things that you should consider?
Yeah. So as far as on my end, so a lot of key things that I would consider is, when I'm looking for those, different applicants, is my biggest thing is energy and personality. Those are a lot of key things that can overall help propel your company into a positive direction, just because you're bringing in people that truly embody as far as what you are trying to, build as far as in your company. So the biggest thing that I always say is just definitely finding people that have that energy and that are positive, that are outgoing, that, it's not hard for them to, interact with different individuals, because as you anticipate your company to grow, you want to make sure that you have those individuals in your company that are welcome, because the worst thing that you could ever have, and I speak on this very, very often, is you have individuals who will come into a company, they'll have their first day, they'll meet an individual, they'll say, hey, I'm such and such, here's your office, and then they'll go on about their day. And then, they might not talk to them ever again. So it's about making sure that you have those individuals that, when you bring them into the organization, that they feel welcome, and not just on that first day, that as they constantly grow through the entire process, that, they're being embraced, that they're actually being offered, assistance, help to overall help them grow and lead into that development and overall grow into the company. And that's truly how you can retain people, is definitely, same thing you were saying in the interview process needs to be the same action that you follow as far as when they get into the company. And
it's really interesting to me because I feel like it trickles down, right? So I'd say that probably during my first week that my boss came, he took me out to lunch. He's like, here are our goals. We're going to be like a team. And we got to know each other. As soon as a new person came into the office, I'm like, I want to take them to lunch. I want them to know like the vision. Yeah. I want buy-in. It sounds a little cult-like when you put it like that. It's not. Yeah. It's creating a culture where, it's my opportunity now because I was so welcomed. I now want to welcome the next person. Right.
Exactly. It's really about, you really touched on it. You really said a key word that, it's welcoming. I can even speak on, as I transition into my role now, I remember my first day, as much energetic and outgoing as I am. Obviously, your first day, you don't know. You're what intimidated. To expect. Yeah, you're kind of intimidated. And even the most, extroverted person that I am, even on my first days, I was still kind of, okay, I don't really know what I'm getting myself into. I don't really know anybody here. It's kind of, I'm not sure, and I remember my first day, everybody was going out to lunch. And I remember they were asking me, they were saying like, hey, like, yeah, do you want to come? And at first I was like, no, like, I'm fine. Like, I'm gonna just stay here and, try to, learn a lot of these things so I can catch up. Cause obviously my training was kind of on a fast pace. So I was really like, no, I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna try to do this. And I never forget, my boss's boss came to me and was telling me, it was like, no, like, come, like, we want you to come, so you can interact with people, meet everybody, so you can, build those relationships. And it was that to, as I'm saying it, it may not seem like, a huge thing, but that simple gesture is what really can make an impact on somebody's experience. Because, as the saying goes, first impression is everything. And with me personally, my first impression is somebody who's literally telling me like, no, like, please, like, come, like, we want you to come. We want you to be here. We want you to, I know it may be, overwhelming, but no, come. So it's really about, the simple fact of just being welcome, just welcoming somebody with open arms.
Absolutely. Put it in a fun Gen Z terms. You want somebody who vibes with your culture.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've gotten your candidate, you know what you're looking for. It gets to the interview. Mm-hmm. What questions are you asking in that interview to help you find quality candidates?
Yeah. So for sure. So a lot of the questions that I typically ask, you have your general questions. Me personally, I always start off with tell me about yourself. I know in a lot of interview process, and as far as the interview process in itself, that is one of the, I would say, a simple question, but it's
so hard
question.
To answer. It's like, do you want to know about my business experience, or do you want to know how I'll fit into the culture? And you get every applicant. I sit on the side of being the applicant far too often, right? And it's like, everything feels like a trick.
Exactly. But yeah, so just kind of those are really, that's as far as the first question I definitely ask, because my biggest thing is, as simple as that question is, everybody should be able to talk about themselves because it's yourself. And that's where you can really, that as far as question alone really sets the tone for the interview. Because if you can really set, the foundation of, hey, this is who I am excited for this, this opportunity. These are things that I've done. This is just kind of an insight into my background, but I'm not talking for another 30 minutes about, my pet dog from, when I was 5 years old, or things along the lines of that. It's really something that can really set the tone as far as for the interview. So for me personally, that's how I always start my interviews also, is definitely just tell me about yourself. And then from that point forward, I definitely like to get into obviously a little bit more work history specific questions. So definitely want to know, hey, what's kind of your timeline as far as for your work history? What were your previous roles? What are you currently doing as of right now? Can you walk me through kind of what a day-to-day looks like? And after I kind of get that synopsis of their work history is when I kind of get into a little bit more personality questions. So, hey, or just situational questions. So, hey, tell me about a time that, you had a difficult task to complete, and how did you overall handle that situation? Or, what are some things that you feel personally as a leader? Because I hire for a lot of leadership positions. Tell me about a time as far as with you being a leader where you felt that, you were presented with a task that you just personally weren't able to complete. Or what are some things?
That's a hard one. You got to admit to failure.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's tough.
Exactly. And I've noticed now, because I have a lot of other friends that are in recruiting too, also in that work in HR, that I've even noticed that the transition of questions are starting to be formulated a little different. So rather than asking someone, hey, what are your weaknesses? An interviewer may ask you, hey, if I was to contact your previous employer, what would they say is one thing that you feel personally? What would you say is one thing that they would say that you could improve on? So now it kind of really puts the ball in the court of, hey, what would your, not what do you personally feel that you can improve on?
But what isn't it perceived?
What is a person that actually worked directly with you? What would they say that you could personally improve on? So, so kind of to even tie all that in that's really kind of where I transition into, more of those situational questions. And then from that point forward at the end is I really, try to hone in as far as on the person, hey, what do you bring to the table outside of your work history? What are some things that I don't see on your resume that you would want me to know? If you were, placed into a team, where it's a lot of individuals from different backgrounds, what would be the first conversation starter that you would have, or how would you build those relationships with those individuals?
And it all goes back to culture.
Exactly.
It all goes back to culture.
Exactly. And it aligns. And that's really how I formulate a lot of my questions is, it really is based off of, obviously what is the culture that we are trying to as far as bring in. And then from that point forward, okay, what is specifically as far as skill set wise, what is the specific skill sets that we are as far as looking for in a candidate to bring in as far as into this role?
Absolutely. So you've got your questions you do ask. Are there any types of questions that you kind of stay away from? I mean, I know that there are legal limits, and absolutely, if you are looking to hire somebody, please check what the laws are, because I've had so many friends come back to me and be like, I can't believe they asked me that. And who's going to sit there and tell the recruiter who might offer them a job, that's an illegal question.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to try to think, what are some, I definitely try to say, obviously from the legal questions for sure.
That's good.
I really just, for sure. And I've been doing this for a little while that I've I've had my faults, in my early stages of recruiting, but now I think it's almost like once I get on the phone, I just I just know how it works. So some questions that I really, try to stay away from. I really try to stay away really just from the generic questions, because one thing I've just, a lot of those, kind of the yes, no questions. I really try to pull more as far as on specific situations. So, because I know we're kind of at the point now that, everybody knows the general, what are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? I try to think of other creative ways to ask that question, but not directly asking, what are your weeknesses? So,
how many people I care too much. I work too many hours.
Yeah, for sure. So I know sometimes I may throw it in here and there, but I sometimes even try to stay away from the typical question of, why should we hire you? Because from that point forward, I'm going to get the general answer of I'm hardworking, I'm dedicated.
Because I applied.
Yeah, exactly. Funny story. I actually had somebody tell me, because I applied.
That's hilarious. But also, I love that for them. They are aware. They are aware of the market and that they are valuable and marketable. I love that for them. Exactly. So, but those are some of the. I like to really just stay away from the generic questions. What are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? Why should we hire you? Because everybody's going to give you those basic answers. And I like to really formulate my interviews to pull out the personality of the person rather than just hearing them say the right answer. I want to actually know, if you say you're hardworking, I want to know, okay, give me an example of how were you hardworking? If you're dedicated, okay, explain to me how you're dedicated. If you're saying you're dedicated, if I was to contact your previous employer, would they agree that you were dedicated? What are ways that you've actually, shown your dedication in any of your previous roles? Has there ever been an instance where you didn't show your dedication? These are things that you really can, pull out certain things in an individual where you can really help you as far as to decipher if this is actually a candidate that you really want to bring in, or if this is not somebody that you would want to bring in. So that's kind of really how I balance it. I really try to stay away from the definitely generic questions. That's very cool. Being able to identify, are they going to fit in with the culture and making that a priority? I love that. What about a situation where you are interviewing somebody who's going to be in a position that's probably more senior than yours, or in a field that you don't like? If you had to go interview somebody for finance and accounting, how are you going to interview that person? I know that you handle the first round, but is it handled any differently than a traditional, maybe like a server or manager interview?
Yeah. It's definitely a lot more critical. Reason being is because as you get farther into those senior levels, C-level, as far as roles, obviously, that we definitely want to find the culture fit. That's definitely still the number one component. But it gets more into those, actually skill set specific. So I really want you to break down, if you're somebody in accounting, break down that accounting process. Were you doing accounts payable? Were you doing accounts receivable? What systems did you use? Did you implement any systems as far as during that process? Was there any time that you actually failed as far as during, any accounting, situations? Have you ever had to deal with, transitioning from one system to another? So it gets, as you get into those more higher level roles, it really gets to the
more
point where
technical
you're asking,
there.
Yeah, it gets a really, really, really more technical. Even at my last job, when I was hiring for a director of operations over the call center, a biggest component that we were really looking for is somebody who has experience as far as in the IVR system, which an IVR system is pretty much just, hey, when you call into a business and it's, hey, press 9 for this, press 4 for that. That's a whole IVR process. So as I was interviewing for a director of, call center operations, I wanted to hear individuals really break down to me, hey, how did you implement an IVR system? How did that work? What didn't work? Did you fail? Were there any difficulties as far as going through that process? So it definitely gets as far as into those more skill set specific questions rather than the more, hey, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Or, hey, what do you bring to the culture? Things like that.
Absolutely. This is out of my own pure curiosity, but does it kind of, when you have to go interview for things, does it kind of change the way that you view being interviewed? Do you still get nervous about it? Or are you kind of like, I've asked all these questions, I know the answers?
Yeah. It definitely, it can get, obviously, going into an interview, it can get a little nerve wracking. I would say with now kind of being in this field for a little while, I don't have just an extensive background, but, having a couple years or so under my belt, it helps me to go in with a little bit more confidence. And overall to be able to anticipate, how to answer the questions. But then it also, kind of gives me that one leg up because I'm on this end. I already know kind of the typical questions that you're going to ask. So I'm able to, I like to say, kind of sell myself a little bit in a greater facet, the best way I can put it. So, but it still is a little nervous because you definitely don't want to get to that point where you sound overconfident. But I also don't want to undermine myself because I still want to, want them to still understand that, I'm a great candidate for these specific reasons. But, I don't want you to think that I'm, just a little cocky or anything like that.
And speaking from a young professional point of view, a lot of us are still new or newer in the workplace.
Yeah.
So we have to have that confidence that, yeah, I can do this, while still admitting the fact that I haven't been doing it very long or I'm new to it.
Yeah.
But coming with that humble, I'm willing to learn, but that it's wrapping all of that into one interview. I'm confident, but I'm willing to admit this, but also I can learn.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely about having that balance. And I think that whenever you're as we are young professionals and, having a couple years under your belt where you have that experience, but obviously you're not having a full extensive background. It's more so about, definitely letting them know, saying, hey, I'm somebody who's very knowledgeable as far as of this position, but because I'm knowledgeable, I'm definitely somebody who's open to learning a little bit more, kind of similar to what you were saying. And I think it's about having that balance because it's tough. It's tough because, as much as you would like to go in an interview and say, oh, I've been doing recruiting for this long, so, that's why you should hire me. I don't think I would get too many jobs, going in like that. So
I've talked
it's just about having that balance.
I've talked to other recruiters who have, one of them hired a history major as a graphic designer. And I'm like, why? They're like, she sat there and she did 4 years of college. I know that she's willing to learn. And that was when just the college degree alone was something that said this person's willing to learn. I said the other thing that they look at is job history. So even if while you were in college, were you consistent with the job you had, or did you stay with the same place through high school? Seeing consistent work history even is just, that's been a very interesting thing for me to be like, oh, that's, it's not necessarily tied to college education. It's tied to consistency.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So
and that's a huge that's a huge moment as of right now, for sure.
Consistency is huge because it's really easy right now to say that job pays more. Bye.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It is. And I would say that that's one thing that stayed, at least consistent throughout this entire pandemic process, is, companies actually really paying attention more to, tenure as far as at certain companies that you've as far as worked at. That's a big thing that I as far as look at. I want to know if in the last, 2 years you worked at, 5 different jobs, and you
want to know why? I mean, there's always other circumstances. Like it's not automatically, I'm not hiring you. It's, I moved every 6 months because I was married to somebody in the military, or every summer I had to take off from this job to go back across the country. But knowing that why, I'm always impressed when I see people who just stay with the same industry. Like, because your life can change, but if you stick with the same industry, you at least know they're passionate about it or that they have a knack for it usually. Yeah.
And even to kind of add on to that is I'm always, it always, makes me, it makes me a lot as far as happy, and excited whenever I see a candidate who's even been at a company for, an extensive amount of time. 'Cause to me, that shows kind of similar to what you were saying about, hiring an individual who went to college for 4 years, but for marketing, but they're a history major. Whenever you see an individual who's been at a job for, let's say 2, 3, 4, 5 years, so on and so forth. I like seeing things like that because that's somebody who, because obviously, going through your, entire experience with the company, I'm sure during your first year, everything wasn't just, happy, jolly, and great. I'm sure there were moments where, definitely not. I'm sure there were moments where you literally contemplated,
I might walk out today.
I'm not going to work this morning. They made me upset yesterday, so I'm not going. But being able to see individuals who were able to stay at a company for, a year's plus time, 2 years plus time, definitely really shows that, okay, hey, you have the dedication and consistency to, kind of, I like to put it in, just layman's terms, kind of rock with the waves. Because we know, I mean, we all know that, every job is not as much as as great. You could go into a great company, but obviously if you're there for, a year's time, I'm sure there were periods of time where you probably thought, this is my last day.
So then you went home and you slept on it, you had something to eat. You're like,
hey,
I guess I'll go back.
Yeah, I like them a lot, so I think I'll go back. So it's definitely about, definitely I keep a lot of those things in mind whenever I'm, just at quick glance looking at resumes and things like that.
So what advice would you give to somebody who is about to interview for the first time as the interviewer? What advice would you give them for that first meeting?
Yeah, for sure. So my biggest thing is I let individuals know, because I actually kind of do this on the side of prepping a lot of my friends for interviews. Is my biggest thing is definitely exude your energy and your personality. I know it's easy for us to get in interviews, and especially if it's even more specific when it's a career field who you're just trying to get your foot in the door. So you're nervous. You just want to say everything right and, give the perfect answer, which is understandable. But my biggest thing is definitely exude that personality and that energy that you have, especially because if you're somebody who can, if you're showing as far as a company that you have the potential to change a culture, when it gets to the skill sets, they can teach you all of those things. But when it comes to energy and personality and actually somebody being culture fit, those are things that's either yes or no. It's not really any in between. It's either yes, you're a culture fit, or no, you're not. So my biggest thing that I tell individuals when I try to help them as far as, prep for interviews, is, the same personality you have around your friends, your close friends, bring that same energy to the interview. I know it's funny that I'm kind of bringing this up is, one of the biggest things that really, as I was saying earlier, kind of sets the tone for the interview is something simple as how you answer the phone, or how you come onto the Zoom call, or how you even present yourself when you first walk into the interview in person. If you walk in and you're just like, hey, how you doing? And you don't sound confident, or you don't even sound excited, then that kind of sets the tone of, okay, well, this might not be somebody that we necessarily want. So it always makes me a little sad whenever I'm calling individuals for different leadership positions. And, I kind of go through my whole spiel of, hey, I'm Ashton from such and such. And they answer the phone, oh, hi, hello. And it's just like, oh, I'm like, are you excited to be here? Like, do you actually want this job? Like, it's things like that. So that's the biggest thing is as far as for just not even just individuals who are first trying to get their foot in the door, but even individuals as far as with a lot of experience is, exude that personality and that energy that you have. Because I know not everybody is just super, extroverted. We definitely have introverted people, but, even with introverted people there are certain individuals that when you get around, you're very extroverted.
I'm introverted, but it's not like I sit and close my office every day because, I have a great culture at work, right? It's exactly. I'm yelling across the hall to my boss. I'm like, did you send that email yet? It's once an introvert is comfortable, I don't really know that you can always tell that they're an introvert, right? So that's why I like that you put that emphasis on culture and being yourself. And I would really encourage people, honestly, if you don't feel like in that interview, even if you get offered the job, but you don't feel like that culture is good for you, I'm going to encourage you not to waste your time or the company's time, just to put it very straight up, because that company may really need people. But if it's not going to work out long term, you're just going to make more work for yourself. You're going to have a lot of heartache and stress.
Exactly.
Make sure that as the person being interviewed, you fit with the culture that they are like the signs that they're sending you. Look around and make sure that not everybody's crying at their desk. That would probably be a good idea.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to, I tell individuals all the time is, same way that interviewer is wanting to get to know you, you need to take that time to get to know them too. Never be afraid to ask questions. I just little tips that I throw to a lot of people that I prep for interviews is, never be afraid to ask who's ever interviewing, hey, how long have you been here and why are you still here? What is keeping you here? What about the culture is it that you like? What are some things about the culture that you wish would improve? These are questions that, it's okay to ask.
One that I've seen. Sometimes. One that I've seen that I really like is tell me, why is this position open in some cases? Or tell me how long your employees typically are here. And if they're leaving, is it because they're moving up, like you've promoted them, or is it because they're leaving? And I mean, I don't know how a recruiter would necessarily answer all of these people left because they hated us. But I bet if you ask those questions and it's a good environment, they'll have a acceptable answer for that.
For sure. Definitely for sure. And because I always say that, same way, I spoke on it a little bit earlier, but the same way that they want to make sure that you're a great fit for them, you need to make sure that company is a great fit for you. And if it's not, it's okay to say no. It's okay to walk away from something.
Especially in this job market. Especially in this job market.
Oh, for sure. You need to take the time to, really write down and brainstorm, what are some key things that I am personally looking for in a company, and make sure that, the company that you're interviewing for aligns with as far as those, certain values that you as far as have. If culture is a big component of it, when you get to the end of the interview and they ask you, do you have any questions? Formulate your questions to ask about the culture. Never be afraid to ask. I think you even touched on it, because I personally agree that I think that's a great question to ask. How did this position come open? Was somebody, as far as let go? Is it is it as far as a new position that was put in place?
That is important to know. If it's a new position and you're a guinea pig, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Just be aware of it, because you might have to create processes.
Yeah, for sure. And to even kind of add on and throw another tip in is, if this is a position that that is new and you will kind of be that guinea pig, don't be afraid to ask, how will success be as far as measured in this role, since it is a new position?
Oh, that is a good question. Somebody write that down.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Those are some key things, is, how is success really going to be measured, since this is a new position? Because I know, obviously, you all may be going through, and I'm just talking as if I was the interviewer, but or the interviewee, but never be afraid to ask, hey, since this is a new position, how does success look like as far as in this role? I know it's something new that is new as far as for you all. But also it'll be new for me stepping into this role. So how will we be able to kind of bridge that gap to make sure that I'm still on the line, still in line as far as for success, but not only just success, but, development to possibly move up into, different roles. These are ways that you can really formulate to even dissect and understand, okay, hey, is this something for me, or no, this truly isn't this isn't for me.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time today. I think we've given a lot of people some great advice for whether they are the ones creating new positions or if they're going into the interview today. If we happen to pique somebody's interest about positions at one of Mongolian Concepts restaurants, where would they go to find those opportunities?
Definitely. So you can go as far as to Indeed. We definitely have all our ads as far as through there, but you also can go to our company website, gomongo.com. In there, you can actually go to careers, and then you will see as far as a wide range of all the positions that we are as far as hiring for. So
absolutely,
those are just two places. Or you can also reach out to me and get any insight to me. I will definitely, leave my information for Mackenzie if anybody does reach out and have any questions.
Thank you so much for your time today. It has been a pleasure, and I hope you have a great evening.
Right. You too. This was fun.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to keep up to date on all the latest episodes. Or if you can't wait, go to MackenzieRathbun.com to check out the great content there. We'll see you next week.